Diabetes mellitus is a clinical syndrome which is characterized by hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia is high blood sugar or high blood glucose level. And this hyperglycemia is caused by absolute or relative deficiency of insulin. So as we talk about diabetes, we'll talk about insulin because that is our interest. I will not go into the medical jargon. I will not go into the depth of it because we are different. Some of you didn't study biology in high school. Some of you are not doctors. So you don't have a lot of medical knowledge. So my aim here is to make it simpler for you so that you understand. Now, let's look at the data of diabetes. From 1980 to 2014, people living with diabetes, the number of people living with diabetes went 4 times, quadruple. In 1980, 108 million people were living with diabetes. In 2014, 422 million people in the world were living with diabetes. So actually today is 2021, 7 years later, and I'm sure the number has even doubled. In 2015 alone, 23 million people were diagnosed with diabetes mellitus. 23 million, that was 2015. So if we can imagine 23 million, 2015, 2016, 2017, it means the number is rising. And it is projected by 2045, 630 million people will be living with diabetes. So 2045 is 24 years from today. How old will you be? So think about it. Now, this number, ironically, has been rising, the low income and medium income countries. So the number has been rising, and that includes Kenya and African countries, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, Malawi. The number has been rising. Of course, in Africa, the number is high. I'll talk about it shortly. Between 2000 and 2016, there has been a rise of 5% in deaths, preventable deaths attributed to diabetes mellitus. So they are called premature mortality. That is deaths that are premature, which means they could be prevented. So 5% increase from 2000 to 2016. In 2019 alone, 1.5 million deaths were recorded directly attributed to diabetes. So you can see diabetes is even worse than corona. So why are governments not pointing their guns to diabetes? 2019, 1.5 million deaths of diabetes. 9% of men worldwide have diabetes, meaning for every 10 men sitting somewhere, one of them has diabetes. And that is a person who has been diagnosed, meaning the rest have not been diagnosed. They have not gone for testing. But what the data say is that 1 in 10 have diabetes, men worldwide. For women, it's 5%. 5%. 1 in 20. But that number could be higher. Studies in data or numbers in Europe, for example, UK, they say that diabetes has led to 30% reduction in life expectancy. So if you are expected to live up to 70 years, then your life is cut short by 30%. Diabetes is the common cause of blindness in people between the age of 20 to 65. Now, 1,500 patients who are living with diabetes reach what we call the end-stage renal failure. So they get kidney disease, and then they get to the end stage. That is the end stage where it's done for you. There has been a rise in what we call limb amputation. Limb amputation is, cutting of your limbs. You've seen people whose limbs have been amputated due to gangrene, or their limbs are rotting. That's what diabetes leads to. Your limbs will rot and the limbs will be cut from the knee going down, others up here from the thigh. And in UK only, there has been a 6 times rise in hospital admission attributed to diabetes. So you can see diabetes is a monster. But I don't know why we are not keen on it. It's a monster. It's killing people. Now, in Africa, 16 million adults are living with diabetes. 16 million. However, note that these 16 million are those that have been diagnosed. In Africa, people go to hospital when they are sick. There is no routine or regular screening for people. In the hospital where I work, the public hospital, people are diagnosed with diabetes as an accident. You just come to the hospital, you are sick, you're not feeling well, you thought it was malaria, you took some antimalarials, but there was nothing. So the doctor says, can we try and check your random blood sugar? And then they realize it's high. Then you're given that diagnosis of diabetes. Then you're like, how? My father was not diabetic. I mean, my mother was not. You start getting into denial and arguments. So in Africa, 16 million adults are living with it. And the number could be higher because the diagnosis done is hospital diagnosis. What if we do routine checkup or screening? We'll get more numbers. And studies say that, or projections have registered that by 2045, there will be a 156% rise in diabetes burden. So diabetes burden means the government is spending more money importing hypoglycemic and insulin. Families are spending a lot of money treating their people, their relatives who are living with diabetes. The person who is living with diabetes is putting a lot of pressure in the macro and microeconomics. Bills and foods and meals and medicines. And these drugs for diabetes are very expensive. The hypoglycemics are very, very expensive. They're not cheap. So you can imagine spending 6,000 every month on hypoglycemics. That is the drugs for diabetes. And then you don't achieve what we call glycemic control. That is, you don't achieve your sugar levels to acceptable levels. Then you are demoted, you're taken to hospital. So it means people have to chip in their pockets for hospital bills, So it's going to be a big burden in future if we do not act now. So what causes diabetes? Simply what we call insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone. It's an anabolic hormone. Anabolic means it makes things bigger. Catabolic makes things smaller. Anabolic means it makes things bigger. These guys who go to the gym, they inject anabolic steroids that make their muscles big. So same to insulin. Insulin makes things bigger, and it's very toxic when it is in higher levels. And just like any other hormone, all hormones, they follow what you call the law of communication. The way I'm talking to you right now, you're listening to me. You are listening to what I'm saying. You are able to decode and put in your mind what I'm saying. So I won't go on shouting, and asking you, can you hear me? Can you hear me? So there's what we call a feedback loop. So because you're listening to me, I'm able to continue talking. But if you are not listening to me, let me check if you are listening to me. Let me check on the channel. Just hold on. I could be talking, yet it's insulin resistance from my end. Let me see. Okay, you see, so you can listen to me. So there is no resistance. So same with hormones. Hormones follow the law of communication. So this particular tissue that releases this particular hormone releases the hormone, then the hormone goes to where it's supposed to act. Then where it is acting, the receptor where it is acting sends signal back to where the hormone came. So the receptor says, hey, it is enough, please stop. So the tissue that was releasing the hormone closes the tap, that releases that hormone, or reduces the tap. So that hormone goes lower. So the law of communication. So all the hormones, testosterone and all those, they behave that way. So now here we have a case of insulin that is being released all the time. And I've said insulin is anabolic and toxic. So anabolic means it will make you fat because it makes things bigger. And then it is toxic. So the point here is, as it becomes more and more and more and more, the body protects itself from this toxicity by ignoring it. If I'm talking to you and I'm just making noise, you will ignore me, so you'll mute me. So the body mutes insulin because it is in high levels, it is toxic. So that muting is called resistance. So that insulin resistance is a protective action that the body takes to protect your body from the toxic effects of insulin. I hope you understood up to there. So if it is now resistant, now the interesting bit is this. If it is now resistant, the negative loop feedback or loop back mechanism says, hey, produce more insulin, please. Produce more insulin, because the insulin that is there is not enough. So this is it. Let me give it an example. You have muted me and I am talking. So for me, I'll continue talking, thinking you're listening, yet you're not listening. You've muted me. So that's what is happening in the body. So the body has muted insulin resistance, but the pancreas continues producing more insulin, because insulin is produced from the pancreas in the beta cells. So the pancreas continues producing the insulin because there is no feedback loop. Because the body has muted insulin, but the pancreas continues producing the insulin. So this continuation now, it reaches a point the pancreas also fails. So basically that is insulin resistance. Now, why are we talking about insulin resistance? Now, we're talking about insulin resistance because the problem of diabetes is not glucose. The problem of diabetes is insulin. Now, let me give an example. Supposing you have a farm 50 kilometers away from your home, and maybe your farm produce, you store your farm produce at home, which is 50 kilometers away from the farm. So you get a lorry, a truck to be transporting your farm produce from the farm to the store. So the lorry is transporting first trip, second trip, third trip, fourth trip. The lorry is telling you, hey, please, the engine is knocking, but you don't listen. So you keep on telling the driver, hey, go and bring more. So it reaches a point where the lorry will fail. So what will happen to the produce in the farm? The produce in the farm will remain there. So people will eat what is in the store. Then what is in the store will diminish, and people will be asking for more food. So that's what happens in the body. The insulin is now the lorry or the truck. The work of this insulin hormone is to carry the glucose that you've eaten into the cells for use. That's what it does. It transports. So if there is insulin resistance, when you eat food, there is no insulin to carry it to the cells because the body has muted the insulin. So glucose will just remain in your blood. So the more you eat, the more glucose remains in your blood. And insulin resistance does not start today. Insulin resistance started way 5 years, 6 years ago. By the time you're being diagnosed with diabetes, it had started long time ago. So insulin fails to carry or transport the glucose in your blood into the cells for use. So you end up with hyperglycemia, that is high blood glucose level. How do you know you have high blood glucose level? You test. But which is the best test? Fasting insulin. You can go to your physician and ask for fasting insulin. That one gives you the best, it gives you the best picture about your insulin level. Of course, you can do the others like random blood sugar, where 7.8 millimoles and below is normal. 11.1 millimoles and above is diabetes. Between 7.8 and 11.1 is pre-diabetes. That is, you are inching closer to. Most of you, I'm sure, you guys, if you are fat, if you take your random blood sugar is the random blood sugar test. Is the test you take anytime, maybe after eating or, yeah. So if it is between 7.8 to 11.1 thereabout, it's pre-diabetes. Then there is the fasting blood sugar. The fasting blood sugar levels. If it's below 5.6 millimoles, it's normal. If it is between 5.6 and 6.9, it's pre-diabetes. You are moving closer to diabetes. If it is above 6.9, that is 7 millimoles or higher, it is diabetes. That one is fasting blood sugar when you've not eaten anything the whole day. Maybe you've just woken up in the morning at 9 and then you go for that test. So what causes insulin resistance? The first one is carbs, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. Because every time you eat carbohydrates, your insulin goes higher. So every time your insulin goes high, every time you end up with insulin resistance. Sugar. And do you know that your body, if we were to mop up all the sugar in your body and put it in on a teaspoon, your body only needs 1 teaspoon per day. Imagine about that. 1 teaspoon. That's what your body needs in a day. And that's for someone who is, busy working, doing jobs and doing what? You only need 1 teaspoon of glucose per day. 1. But you can hear or you can see human beings are taking a lot of sugar, which is useless. We talked about MSG when we were talking about Roico. I'll do a tweet tomorrow about Roico. Monosodium glutamate, which is common in all these, most of these spices, not these natural spices, but these, the Roico cubes and these funny things that they trick you they trick your taste buds to think you're eating something delicious. So MSG raises your insulin level, should be by 80%. You can imagine. It's number 2 on my list. Proteins also raise your insulin, but proteins with low fat, e.g. whey protein. So proteins with low fat. So if you're eating protein, eat protein that has high fat, e.g. meat, eggs, not the egg white, The egg white will raise your insulin, but the egg white plus the yolk, they will not raise your insulin that much. The other thing that leads to insulin resistance is frequency of eating. Eating all the time. We've said every time you eat, your insulin goes high. It goes high. The other thing that raises your insulin, vegetable oils, the salads that we eat. These, the so-called fresh fries, Rinas, Kimbo, Elianto. Those fats are very unhealthy. And I wrote on this channel some times back about the origin of these fats. And I said, most of these oils that you guys consume were initially meant to drive machinery. If you look at the studies, I'm sure there are guys here who know that. They were initially meant to drive machinery. So then some people became clever and said we can trick people and to eat this. So they condemned butter, they condemned saturated fats, that is the animal fats, and say those ones are bad, let's eat this. Yet saturated fats is what nature gave you. These others, the so-called salads, have been given to you by industries. So what will you go for? Go for what nature gave you. Don't go for what is man-made, because man is making them to get money. They're not making them for your health. Most of these vegetable oils are seed oils. They're made from seed, starting from cotton, seed, corn, seed, sunflower, seed. So they're made from seeds, soy or soya, seeds. So they're made from seeds. Just stay away from them. Eat healthy fats. We've talked about this many times. So these are the main reasons why you will have insulin resistance. Now, diabetes is very, very detrimental to people, because some of the consequences are things like retinopathy, that is blindness. The sugar is deposited in those in the retina of your eye, so you end up with diseases of the eye, which includes blindness. If you look at most guys with diabetes, they are blind, or they're inching towards blind. They have specs because of loss of vision. The other thing is nephropathy. Nephropathy is from the word nephrons. Nephrons are small tubes in the kidney, the one that's responsible for filtering your urine. So diabetes leads to that, which will lead to kidney disease or kidney failure. And even in the kidneys, it's worse. People with diabetes, people living with diabetes, if you test their urine, it's very sweet. The other consequence is hypertension. Because of inflammation of the veins, deposition of sugar, atherosclerosis, diabetes leads to hypertension. These other people will be telling you cholesterol. We talked about cholesterol, and we say cholesterol is very good for your health. And we said 80% of your cholesterol is manufactured or produced in your body. So why will the body produce something that is bad for it? Nobody has ever answered me that question. The body produces 80% cholesterol. Your food only has 20%. And if the body sees your food has more cholesterol, the body will reduce its production. It's just a balance like that. So why will the body produce something that is bad for itself? It's not possible. I asked that question and nobody answered me. And we talked about cholesterol in the channel. So if you want more questions, if you want more answers, sorry, you can go to the channel and go and read. The other thing is neuropathy. Neuropathy is from the word neurons or nerves. So these people usually have something like pins and needles. You feel like your feet has some pins or needles, with time, they may end up with stroke. They may end up with poor coordination because of diseases of the nerves which are associated with diabetes. The other thing is memory loss. People with diabetes, people living with diabetes will end up with memory loss. I shared here the other time that Alzheimer's is nowadays considered as type 3, diabetes type 3. Then, of course, diabetes leads to you being fat, and it becomes cyclical like that. So how do you reduce insulin resistance, or how do we take care? Of course, it is in the diet. Nothing more, nothing less. Fiber, very important. Fiber feeds your bacteria, and your bacteria is able to help in the digestion of your food. Very important. However, don't overeat fiber. We talked about this. When you overeat fiber, you overwhelm the bacteria. When you overwhelm the bacteria, you predispose yourself to hemorrhoids and constipation, hemorrhoids, and those. This is the logic. If you are in the streets and there is a traffic jam, you don't add more cars. You wait for the cars to go for you to add more cars. Same with fibers. You don't overeat fibers the way people think. And the body, you as a person, you don't digest fiber. Fiber is digested by bacteria in your gut, not you. The other way to reduce insulin resistance, of course, very important, is fasting. Right now we are fasting, and we are at, let me see, we are at the 26th hour, meaning we are left with 22 hours. So keep going, take water, but don't overtake water, because if you take a lot of water again, you deplete the minerals that are in your body. For example, sodium. That's why I insist, if you have to take water, add some pinch of salt and take the water. Take coffee, black coffee, sugarless, but right now you won't sleep, so right now you can take tea. And if you have apple cider vinegar, you can take it. So nothing with calories, no lemon water, no honey, no fruit, no nuts, just water. The issue here is we are staying away from calories. So fasting is also another strategy or another solution to reducing insulin resistance. If you reduce insulin resistance, you unmute the insulin and the body begins responding to it. Of course, the other thing is eating foods that have good minerals like potassium, magnesium, chromium, selenium. These are very good minerals for your body. Africa is lucky because our soils are still very adequate with minerals. As much as large-scale farming has spoiled our soil with a lot of fertilizer, this acidic fertilizer, but we still have very healthy soils. So our plants are able to pick those very good minerals, copper, chromium, magnesium, very important. Also, our animals, that is cows, meat, goats, they graze organically. The pasture that they feed on is natural pasture, natural grass. So we are lucky that our meat still has some good minerals. Of course, I know farmers nowadays inject a lot of antibiotics to these animals. They give them a lot of GMOs to make them fat or to fatten them. But if you can get organic meat, organic eggs, we talked about free-range eggs, chicken eggs, the better. Those foods have they are very rich in these minerals. The other thing that will reduce your insulin resistance is vitamin D. Very, very important. Still, Africa, we are lucky that we have the sun. We have the sun. Look at Africa, North Africa and South Africa. Why do you think they're having a lot of depression? Why do you think North and South Africa have a lot of diabetes, obesity, hypertension? Why? Because of the sun. They don't get adequate sun like us who are on the equator. So being on the equator is very, very good. It's an advantage. That sun is what drives the life of a human being. That sun is what drives your life as a person. Let nobody tell you that, that sun is your life. Sun is just like water. And these are things we've been given by nature. Use them. I was reading another study yesterday where it's saying that most people who are depressed are the guys who lock themselves in the house. They don't get the sun. So the sun is very good. Even those guys with inflammation, autoimmune diseases, psoriasis, and these others. Why do you think these autoimmune skin infections are common during winter? It's because the sun is not there. So the sun is good. So vitamin D will help you manage insulin resistance, which leads to diabetes. Stress, reduce stress. I gave out here a formula of stress because the world right now is very stressful, is very noisy, is very chaotic. So it's upon you to learn how to manage your stress. And I gave you a formula of stress, managing stress. Then finally, sleep. Sleep is very important. Why? Because sleep recalibrates your hormonal cycle. We have what we call the circadian clock or the circadian rhythm. Most of the problems, metabolic problems we are suffering today is because we have refused to embrace the hormonal or the circadian rhythm. I have a question. Why do you think a cock crows at that time that it crows? And it crows at that particular time, or birds. Why do you think? Do they have a clock somewhere? No. They have a circadian clock. And this circadian clock fills up. It fills up to a point where now the cock or the cockerel has to release the pressure. So that releasing that pressure means crowing. Same with sleep. Last time we were to have a discussion about sleep. Sleep is like you are putting pressure in yourself. Then when it gets to around 10, the body wants to release that pressure. And you learn something. If you're used to waking up early at 5, within 1 week, you'll be waking up without anyone telling you to wake up. You just find yourself up at 5. When you check on your clock, it's 5. Because we have within us a circadian clock. So failure to follow that circadian clock is what predisposes us to things like depression, mental illness, because the body is resisting. The body is refusing what you're giving it. Yeah, so that's what we heard about diabetes. Prevention, of course, a good diet, the kind of diet that I promote, the keto diet, and working out. And working out does not mean running on the treadmill or doing aerobics. It means doing hits and lifting weights. Running all the time raises your cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, putting so much stress on yourself. A lot of essential fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates, and fasting. So basically, as simple as that. Otherwise, the hospitals don't want to tell you the truth. I work in a hospital and I know. They'll just be prescribing. Every time you go there after a month in the MOPC. MOPC is the medical outpatient clinic or the diabetes clinic. When you go there, you see your physician. He tells you, okay, let us reduce this dose. Come next week, next month. You come next month. Wow, these sugar levels are not going down. Let us add the dose. You add the dose. You come next month, the figures are high. the physician tell you, now we will admit you. You are admitted, insulin, you are told go and inject insulin. No human being was meant to be condemned to a life of pills. You need to live a life of freedom without pills. Pills are temporary. They will alleviate your problem temporarily as you try to fix yourself.
Mwamuke